Brandy, God bless you, woman. How are you?
We're back. I'm doing good. How are you?
Man, I feel okay. So our last conversation, I really felt like we got back in our groove, and I was thinking about it today, and it's been since like May of last year that I feel like we were just grinding so hard.
Yeah.
You and I had this beautiful flow at the beginning of the last year, and then I feel like from May until now, it's like it's just been this slog where it's like we connect, but we're like missing. Dude, I feel like we're back.
We are back, baby. Let's do it.
Can I give a shout out to what was Spitfire Taco?
Oh, yes, their early bird burrito. So you are eating basically like their hash bowl, their Firebird bowl. And it has, I think yours has carne asada in it. It has tater tots, all the goodies with guacamole and like all the sauces.
The tater tots at Spitfire are lit. Like
so
they just
crunchy.
lean into it.
They
like,
do.
I have not had a love affair with tater tots this much since middle school. And Spitfire has rekindled my love for tater tots. I'm like, these were fire. I remember this.
Yes.
Like, where's the ranch? Just dump ranch and tater tots.
Oh, and I used to do ranch and barbecue sauce, and then I'd like aggressively mix it. So it's like a creamy,
ranchy barbecue?
sweet ranchy barbecue.
Doesn't Lay's have a flavor that's like ranch barbecue or like creamy barbecue or something?
I don't know. Maybe they do. I just don't typically eat
guarantee
Lay's very frequently.
I don't either. I just see it at the store.
Oh my gosh, epic. So this month's episodes, we have an amazing board member member in general, Heather Ferguson. So she's actually helping sponsor these episodes to
Shout out Heather Ferguson.
Heather, because she is like the bomb. If you don't know Heather, you're missing out, because not only is she like a bomb mom, an entrepreneur.
She's on the board of
the board of directors of the chamber. She is an amazing advocate. And then to top it all off.
And to be clear, the board is all volunteer,
all
right?
volunteer.
So she's like, hey, let me help these local businesses just be better.
Yes. She's
God
like,
bless you,
and
Heather.
she's always that woman that like comes in clutch. She's like, Brandy, what do you need? Do not tell me later on. You tell me now. What do you need from me? And she comes in and just knocks things out of the park whenever you need her. Okay. She's also a wife, a mother. Her kids go to the high school. They are involved. She's like involved mom with sports, and then the top 1% realtor producer in the state.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like she is the cool. I want to be her when I grow up.
What's her brokerage?
She actually runs Point Realty Brokerage.
Oh,
so she's a co-owner.
Oh,
so
baller.
she is super like Idaho realtor centric, wants to make sure that she's there advocating for realtors in our community and making it a place where you can come together and knowledge share and just feel like you are supported from the ground up. Like we actually had a business after hours there. They have the neatest office on the face of the planet. Oh my gosh. We have funny pictures of Orville pretending he fell down the stairs, like at the bottom of our stairs.
You know what my problem is? My entire life world engagement is in this 12 by 12 room or in the basement of downtown.
In the basement.
Right. I had Secretary of State Phil McGrain come in. Oh my God, you're killing me with that brew. That's hilarious. Keep going. I'll keep talking. Because you're not a giant person. And all right, listen. So Phil McGrain comes in, and he's great. So he's talking about I need your help. I really need your help. So Phil McGrain comes in. They're passing legislation they're attempting to pass legislation improving transparency with campaign financing.
I love it.
So do you remember last year in the primaries when we got like feet high stacks of mailers against like Chuck Winder and Mike Moyle and Melissa Durant and like all of these people, and these mailers, they had the most atrocious pictures of like Fauci with a marionette puppet and like all of these different things, right?
Okay.
Like Biden and Chuck Winder, as if Biden and Chuck Winder are bros or something. Like all of these insane mailers. And the problem was the laws that we had in place last year said like you can run this stuff, but you have to register with who you are or give details within like 30 days. So in the last 29 days leading up to the election, there was this onslaught of information sent to the state of Idaho just to mess with our elected representatives. And nobody knew who it was coming from because they had this window of time where they didn't have to report who they were or what they were doing.
Stop
to
it.
the Secretary of State. So Secretary of State Phil McGrain and a bunch of other people are trying to pass legislation that reduces that time window down to like 24 hours. So like if you send something out into the state of Idaho, you have to let us know who you are within 24 hours. And he's also trying to get something passed so that they have to upload images of what the mailers are or what the videos are. And what I want to do next primary season is do the mailer dumpster fire weekly update where you and I download the photos and we trash all over every single out-of-state political party or political PAC that's coming in. It's like, here's Young Americans for Liberty, ass hats, and then like go into like, and this, and we just show everything.
And we need to rank them by our favorites and our least favorites.
And just help the state of Idaho know these are not people from Idaho. They do not wish us well. They do not care about us. Their sole purpose is to come into this state, affect our elections, and like leave. Just messing it.
Mess with it.
That's it. That's the entire business model. I don't know. Just lick the finger, put it in the pie.
I love
just
that
mess
idea.
it.
Well, and it aligns so desperately with what we are doing too, even at the chamber level of that like open, honest, transparent, and like that being part of our culture. Let's do it. We want transparency. At the end of the day, honesty is the best policy.
And let's advocate for local. And if local means state politicians, great. If local means local businesses, great. But like, let's protect Idaho and help people. Because here's the thing. Phil McGrain has the greatest website ever. You've never been. I've only been when he showed me. And every time I see it, I'm like, this is the coolest website ever. Like, oh my God. I can't even get myself to go spend an hour on it because I'm like always moving fast.
Okay.
Now, the problem is, he has all this great information. So as he publishes things like, hey, here's the mailer for like this political action group or this action group, we need to merge that information onto social media. We need to migrate it from a website that's a Secretary of State's website that is difficult to access. And you got to go, it's not even that hard, but like you got to have to know where to go. Let's bring that to like Instagram and TikTok and like bring it to YouTube and be like, no. These are the idiots, right? And we'll like show the logos.
Yes.
We'll tell everybody where they're from. We'll tell them how much money they're spending, and we'll do a weekly update.
I like that.
So leading into the primaries, whether you like somebody or not is irrelevant.
Knowledge is power.
I want people to be, I want Idaho versus Idaho. I want people in Idaho arguing with other people in Idaho, and I do not want them persuaded by out of state. That's it. That's my dream.
I love that though, because you've created that platform. We've talked about this time and time again, being Switzerland in all of this, giving people an opportunity to give their side of the story, whether or not everyone agrees. You give that like bottom line platform.
Right.
So this would be a great initiative that falls right in line with that. I love it.
Right.
I'm in. I can't wait to see all the pictures.
We're going to do this.
Oh my gosh, how fun for us.
It's going to be great. We'll get the PDFs. We'll play the little videos.
We need a soundtrack. I feel like.
Okay, what would the song be? Like, I'm down for a soundtrack.
Taking care of business every day. We're taking no.
It needs to be like gangster rap. Like Snoop Dogg in the background.
I don't dislike it.
I don't dislike it.
I don't dislike it.
We could do the Doors. Like Break On Through.
Yeah.
You know, that's a classic.
I like that.
I don't know. We just need to make a bunch of stuff where we go through it. So if people are curious, they can find out like, oh, these people aren't even like Idaho people.
I love that.
I love that for us.
I really do too. It'll be really interesting to see where the next set of like elections goes, because we do have 2 like city council coming up this year for Eagle. So it'll be fun. Honestly, it's been really interesting because one of my big initiatives this year, and I've said this to everybody, is to get to know our city officials, because the chamber and the city have not always had a really symbiotic relationship. We have in the past. And then for whatever reason, when I came on board, it wasn't necessarily like that. So I'm really doing my best to try to create these relationships, because at the end of the day, we are all here to support the local businesses. We're here to support our local community, and it only works if we do it together.
Right. Do you have an update on the Eagle Fun Days and like the fireworks and everything?
So from what I understand, so they had put out their, they had like a meeting, I believe last week, and they had put out a press release that stated that they're still going to have the parade, and it's going to follow, from what I know, the original parade, like format. Well, streets, the route.
Right.
Sorry, my brain is like digesting burrito, and it couldn't come up with the word route. Go figure. Clearly, coffee hasn't kicked in yet. So yeah, which is really intriguing to me, because that is actually downtown by Heritage Park. So we're really interested in seeing what the city has planned, what they're going to do about all of these things. Only thing I've heard is that they're still planning on having stuff at the high school, but I've also heard that they're having plans to have things at like in front of City Hall right over there, where they've done the trunk or treating and they've done like their big Christmas area. Fireworks have been canceled. As far as we know that they're not coming back. There's quite a bit of conversation online about that, though. I mean, I've been on Facebook, and people are very passionate about this entire topic.
You know what I'm going to do?
What are you going to do?
I'm going to text Dr. Derek Bubb right now.
Who is that?
He's the superintendent of West Ada.
Oh.
It was my understanding they were canceling the fireworks because the attorneys in West Ada were like, listen, the liability here is astronomical.
And see, we've heard, this is what we were told, is that the people that lived or that were behind the high school complained. And it's actually kind of funny because that's my church. So that was a really interesting statement. But I'm dying to know.
Were they actually, did you know anything about the church complaining? Like, is there any evidence of that?
Not that I know of personally, but, it could have. I personally don't know. I'm not necessarily privy to all of that information. So as far as we know, Fun Days is happening. They're still going to do the parade. It's going to go on its original route. There will be no fireworks, but there will be a handful of things that the city is putting on for Fun Days.
Okay, awesome.
But we don't know our participation just yet. We want to do something and we want to partner with the city, but I don't want to announce what we're planning just yet.
Good call.
Because there's conversation.
You got it. Listen, you got to keep that close to the chest. Like, you don't want to tell
just
people.
Just like this burrito. I'm going to keep it close to the chest.
I'm going to hold it right here.
My little baby burrito.
It's the size of your torso, Brandy.
It's the size of my children whenever they run.
Oh, my God.
Oh, I love that.
Somebody asked me the other day if I was into, I'm actually doing another series, I think after the legislative session, called Your Neighbor from California. And I want to do like a 10-part series where I talk to like a friend like you. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I know in broad strokes why you moved, but I want to know like really why you moved. Mm-hmm. And I want to know the leading up to it, how you found this place. Because I think that over and over, the more I talk to people about why I personally and my family moved, I had a really good friend who's this, multi-generation Idahoan, very, very high up in the business world. He hit me up and he's like, I had somebody, I think it was Representative Monica Church, asked me, she's like, why did you move? And I gave her this, 5-minute explanation. And he hit me up the next day. He was like, I had no idea. Like, I look at my neighbors differently now. I had no idea you guys went through it. I'm like, oh yeah, man, it was hell. Like, this was not a good situation for anyone. And we're your fellow Americans. Mm-hmm. And we were going through this thing. So like, I know that Californians get really worked up at times. Like, I get that. And I know that they do things or say things that don't really make sense to other people or why they're so passionate or intense about something. I understand that. But if you just take a second to understand why they're acting that way, I'm not saying you have to agree. Absolutely not. But it will make more sense. It was like, okay, you're a little off because like you're really worked up, but I hear you. Like, let's get a coffee. Like, walk with me. Let me tell you how we do it in Star. Yeah. Or like, let me tell you what's going on in Eagle or Boise or whatever. It's like, just take a beat, but we got to understand. You know what I thought about?
What?
The other day? I think the thing that bothers me most about this state at this point with what's going on is that it's like, we're a married couple that's refusing to talk through the fight. It's like, listen, you've been married for a while. Yes. I've been married for a minute. Like, we all know that if you don't talk to your spouse when you get into a fight, you get nowhere. The only way to resolve it is come to the table and be like, okay, all right, what do you want? Like, what's the deal? Like, okay.
The willingness to communicate.
Sit down and just talk.
Absolutely.
And I see so many people wanting to utilize people's reluctance to talk and weaponize that polarization. It's like, you shouldn't talk to them. They're just the devil. They're not even worth talking to. It's like, that's the only thing I dislike. Like, that's the whole nature of my show. Why don't we just sit down? That's the only thing that bothers me. And I don't think it's the average Idahoan that's doing that. I think there are very specific political groups that are like, okay, let's weaponize people's, anxieties and get them to not talk to each other. Whereas like, I'm on the other side, like, can't we all talk?
Yeah.
Like, can't we all just have a good time?
That's how I run. So I think that's why we get along so well. I feel like those conversations would be so important. And you're right. It really is a great analogy of a married couple that doesn't want to have that conversation. And unfortunately, the same thing happens in those relationships as in these scenarios. You build resentment and you build up these brick walls, and it's 10 times harder to tear down that wall if you've continuously built upon it and built upon it and built a narrative.
Right.
And you're not even willing to see across the fence what that other person has to say.
Right.
It's become Wilson, and you can see nothing but the eyes, and you're hoping that you can just keep it amicable enough. And, I love that. I love the conversations and the intentionality of those.
It's going to be great.
It's important
Listen.
because the mass movement isn't changing, and it isn't stopping. There's people coming from every which way. And there's no matter what side of the board you sit on, you're going to have a difference in opinions on something, regardless of what it is. Like, we've had really great conversations. We're not always going to agree on everything, but if we're willing to have a conversation and respect, each other's opinions on things, then we're always going to be able to get along at that point.
Right. Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that it's a really interesting position we're in now, and that, like, we have that wrinkle. But somebody asked me the other day, they're like, you should do a show on like why you're doing your show. And this person was like, hey, you should let me host it. And I'm like, okay, I like the idea. But it's also like, I don't know that I don't have some like maniacal or like superhero or like any incredible, like, we need to talk. Why am I doing this? Because we need to talk, right? Like, you look at your partner, you're like, we need to talk.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, that's all this is. Every day, somebody comes in from the legislature and they have some bill that I think is crazy. It's like, can we just talk? Like, you just tell me why you're doing this? And like, every time I'm like, all right, I agree with you or I don't agree with you. Fine. You're not a crazy person. Maybe we just don't agree. Like, that's okay too.
Yeah. I feel like
Sometimes they're crazy.
This is maybe what Matt says when I leave. Okay.
I can conclusively say, I don't think I've really met any crazy people that are elected officials.
And you know what? I can totally believe that.
Right.
Because we've gotten, that is not a proper English. I'm so sorry. My mother is mortified right now if she's watching this. We've been privy to seeing these people in different scenarios and watching them. And genuinely, every one of them seems like a reasonable adult. They seem like reasonable people who you can carry on a conversation, and they don't seem like they, are crazy in the background.
No. You know what?
I don't think you can hide it for that long either.
I don't think you can. What I have realized is that when people talk about small town politics, I am now realizing, like, state level politics. Oh, I thought it was a text back. I was like, oh, he's texting me back.
Fangirling.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got back. He got it back
Fireworks.
to me.
What are we doing? What I think is hilarious is that the Eagle local politics are so wild. Like, the state level, I meet with these people all day and talk about things. I'm like, okay, like, I see where you're coming from. I also have now realized that people run bills across the state for like 10 different reasons. And only one of those reasons is to actually get the bill across. Like, people run bills. I know. Listen, you probably know this because you're a girl. If you wanted, when you in your single days, to go out to a bar and like find an attractive man and like, gain his attention, you bring an ugly wing lady. You always bring somebody that's like, if you're like an 8, you got to bring a 6. Like, you got to bring a friend. And that's like, this is a really well-studied thing.
That's called the designated ugly friend.
There you go.
The Duff.
Oh my God. I didn't know that was a thing.
There was a full-on movie about the Duff.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes.
This is a thing that girls know.
I didn't, but I watched a movie about it. Matt, I met my husband at 21 years old. I had just figured out what life started to look like, and then I was like, well, I'm done. So
isn't
clearly,
it funny looking back when you're 21 now? It's like, you idiot. Like you had, like, you just like, you know what happened? The lights just turned on. Like you hadn't addressed, like,
my
changed the
frontal
paint
lobe
color.
had
Yeah.
not developed yet. I was a much more rational, kind human being. Don't get me wrong. I feel like I've always been pretty kind, but like, I thought through things more. I didn't do as impulsive things after I hit 25. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is what normal feels like. Uh-oh. What have the last few years been like? And then I randomly will get memories of something that's happened. And I'm like, ugh, oh.
Okay, this happens because I am plagued by regret.
Yes.
Like I'm plagued by guilt.
Yes.
I wake up at least once a week having like in a cold sweat, thinking like I'm back in college and like how terrible it was and just how dumb I was. And I had this girl I broke up with like 1,000,000 times and got back together. Like,
can I tell you a funny about that?
God,
okay,
go.
So it's not
Did
about
you break
me.
up with a girl? That's crazy.
Oh
Tell
my
me the whole
gosh,
story,
look
Brandy.
You know, Matt. Well, this one time at band camp.
Sharon. Keep going.
No, okay. I heard a funny story, and I'm gonna remove names because they're my friends, and I can't like sell them out. I have a friend whose husband, they, he had a girlfriend prior to her, and it was a very serious girlfriend, and they were Mormon at the time, and in that you are very much looking for your spouse and you're looking for your partner, and like
You're here for a long time, not a good time.
Yeah, you're dating to find your husband or wife.
That's
You're not
the orientation.
Yes, exactly. So I give that information because I want to set the scene. So he goes to take her out to dinner. He's like, hey, we need to go to dinner, this and that. And I guess they'd been dating for quite a while. I'm assuming 6 months, something like that. So naturally she thinks, oh my gosh, we're going out to dinner. Like, this is it. Like, this is the day, this is the moment.
It's been 6 months. This is way overdue.
So they go out to dinner, have dinner. From my knowledge, they go and sit at this special bench. She thought he was proposing. He broke up with her. Because he was like, oh, we just, we're doing better as friends. Like, I don't think this is. And I love him, but I'm like, oh my gosh, Bob. Like, what are, like, you set up the date and you went walking and you sat on this bench and you broke up with her? Why wouldn't you just tell her at dinner? Like, why didn't you be like, hey, I think we need to have a conversation? He's like, I was young. I didn't know. So I always crack up. So every time somebody thinks about breakups, for whatever reason, my friends come to mind and that story. And I get all the like regret, like, oh, and I think of that story and I'm like, oh, Bob, oh no, Bob.
Then you know what that makes me feel?
But like, I think she walked home from there is the best part.
She walked home from
she
the
didn't
special
wanna,
bench.
She's
She's like, I can't get back in the car with you.
Yeah.
And this is pre-Uber.
Like, couldn't face him. It's a whole thing. And then he ends up getting, I believe, engaged and married to obviously his now wife. And they have a beautiful little boy in this life. And it's just funny to see where we come from. That
makes me feel a lot better because I don't feel better for Bob's ex-girlfriend. And I don't feel better for Bob. Poor Bob and poor ex-girlfriend. But it does make me like, here's another problem. You're so self-interested. You're so focused on you and all the things you're doing. And even my guilt is self-interested. It's self-focused. I don't have perspective of, wow, these other people probably did some dumb things too. Like my friends, I just think about how dumb I was. And yeah, I was dumb. Like I did dumb things and I'm applying a morality and ethical set that I have developed very difficultly over the last 20 years to this person that went to prom 24 months prior. Like the 20-year-old Matt was not firing on all cylinders. And like, here I'm mad at him for being an idiot. It's like, you had to learn at some point. Exactly. Like, are you mad at yourself for pooping your diapers when you were like 2? Because that's about
mildly.
If I'm like 22 and I'm looking back to when I was 2, like that's the same time frame. From 22 to 2 versus 42 to 22, like that's the same time. Was I mad at myself for like sucking my thumb? No, I was learning things in the world. And at 22, I was like doing good enough things. I was better. Like I was working harder. I was becoming a better person. Like I was on an upward trajectory. I was just like digging out of a hole.
I also feel like that's a piece of that.
Spitfire crushed this meal.
Dude,
it was so
I've
good.
eaten half the burrito already.
I'm almost done with this bowl.
I did the bacon bird, but I got them to take the eggs out because I didn't feel like being swollen.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look.
Really not a good look for me. But they subbed it with chorizo inside too. The chorizo with that brown sugar bacon is like this most insane combination.
Man, that's delicious.
It is. I'm seriously basking in every piece of this glory.
God bless it.
It's so good.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking like, it shows a form, though, of emotional intelligence, and it shows that you're constantly working to be a better version of yourself when you're able to look back and I think cringe at those moments. Because if you don't have cringeworthy moments, you haven't developed anything past that. Because you can't look back in retrospect if you aren't already 2 steps ahead of that.
Right.
So I feel like that's a form of growth. So go us.
Listen, go us. Air 5. I can tell you for sure, when I even look back on the episodes that I did, the first episode of this podcast, or like the second one or the third one,
they're my favorite.
I don't cringe at like what I said. Like I didn't say anything bad, and the conversation was totally fine. But dude, seeing where the production is then versus now, knowing what I had no idea about, like all of these things, was like, wow, man, like what a wild time of just learning things.
But look at the grit that went into that too, because you had to learn everything as you went. And I love that you did it and you didn't have to have perfection immediately. You went and you're like, okay, what do I grow from here? How do I develop into the next version from here? So I think that is the coolest portion of watching like entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Is watching them take these leaps and bounds. And then they're starting off because they're passionate about what they're doing. Right. And then they learn how to chisel away at it. Like a sculptor.
Yeah.
You are literally sculpting this beautiful creation. And, you know, it might not look like it from the beginning. And you might be, you know, oh, those edges are a little blunt. But by the end, it's this amazing product that you're super proud of because look at how much work went into it.
That wasn't that Michelangelo's, like he had
that is
a
literally
commentary.
what I'm picturing in
he
my
had
head.
A commentary about some of his sculpture. It was like, the sculpture's there. I just have to take off the extra. Right? Like it's all there. You just, and like, I think about this production in a very, for me, it's like, I've been at this over 2.5 years now. I don't even think about it in like a 2.5 year time horizon. It's more like, this is a great podcast at year 10, but this is where we are in the story of the podcast. Like, but it's a foregone conclusion. I'm just taking out the extra. I'm just revising everything. Like if this is a book or a story, this is where I am in the story. And I can see the things that got revised in the first 2.5 years. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 7.5 years.
Right.
But I know at year 10, it's going to be this thing where it's like, wait, how did this get going? And it's like, well, yeah, I can tell you at like year 2.5, this is where I am. Like it's all like almost every day I turn on, I'm like, wait, what's happening now? Like, what are we doing? Like, wait, how are we here now? Like, what is this? Yeah, really, very much so. And I've had that sensation consistently, like fumbling around for the first kind of year. And then from that first year, I've had this consistent from year 1 to year 2.5. It's like, wait, how did I get here? Like, how am I talking to this person? Like, who is this person?
The leaps and bounds you've made in such a short period of time, and then all these changes that went into it, but they were all methodical changes.
Right.
Like, I know you well enough, and we've had lots of conversations of intentionality of why you're doing certain things and why you're making a certain change or an adjustment. And it was always for the betterment of that 10-year plan.
Right. I think that's
like
what
next step.
To be specific to what you said, entrepreneurs, right? Like you represent a bunch of business owners. And if you look at a business as like, okay, this is a hyper successful business at year 10. I'm just at month 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So if instead of assessing where am I now, which is like, well, you're not nearly as successful as you want to be. And it's like, change the time frame to no. At year 10, I'm an overwhelming success. But if you want it to be overwhelming success at 6 months, you're probably going to be disappointed because it's a train wreck. Like this whole damn thing is a train wreck. Like I was thinking today.
Okay.
First year I was doing content. I remember I would go home like at 5 o'clock. I'd be in this room for 10 hours straight by myself, and I'd go home. And I remember, you're dealing with young kids and various times. And I remember talking to my wife, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Do you realize that? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I come home like beaten down by the world. It's just like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening? How am I doing it? Who am I doing it for?
Yeah.
What's the value? All these things. And that's now, obviously I know I have those answers, but it's such a painful thing to even say out loud. I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I even showing up tomorrow? Like, this is bonkers.
It's that metamorphosis. It's like the chrysalis with the butterfly. And like, you are literally cocooning yourself in those first couple of years, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to look like when I come out of this? What am I going to look like? And you're sitting and you're doing all of that work inside this chrysalis, which is you 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, hustling, making connections, building this beautiful platform. And then you come out the other end and you're like, whoa, that was way more colorful and beautiful. And you just come out of this with this crazy, amazing product at the end.
Oh, yeah.
But like, most people see this beautiful butterfly. They don't realize all of that work that went into creating that butterfly in the chrysalis and what you had to do to get to that point, which I think what's so neat about your show, though, is you can watch it.
Oh my God, you can see the
visual.
whole thing.
You get that visual from the beginning up. I kind of feel like, though, that this is what the chamber has felt like too for the last 6 months for me.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's what I was saying at the beginning. I think we both, like a year ago, we were both in this like really kind of flux crazy point where we were kind of like having fun from January until May, and then May stuff just got real, and it's like, this is crazy. And like, we've been in, and now we're both kind of like through that year chrysalis cocooning thing.
Coming out the other end. I think that like pinnacle peak for me was actually the golf tournament. That's when I feel like the crazy started just becoming the cusp of what life felt like. And that's the day you hit 4,000 and you just were ramping up so aggressively and quickly in the best way, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, that was the point that we were teetering, that it was like, oh my gosh, what's happening from here?
Right. What is this going to become?
Buckled up.
Yeah.
We literally buckled up and we're like, okay, let's do this.
Right.
But I love it because you said 10 years. You're like, okay, 10 year. And that just keeps reminding me, because our president of the board, God love him, he's one of the most determined, tactical and strategic people I think I've ever met. And he's taught me how to go about things in that manner. Ex-military, of course. Air Force, if I'm correct. John, please don't shoot me if this is this.
I'm sorry, John.
My bad, John. Dr. Maltby. But he literally has had this vision of what 10 years could look like for the chamber once we hit this transition phase and we really establish our values and our goals and what we stand on and what pillars we're going to dig into the ground. Because once you dig those into the ground, we're not coming back.
Right.
We are using those to launch off of. And it's neat to see other entrepreneurs and business owners looking at a 10-year timeline versus going, what am I going to do just this year? Because there's such a beauty that comes with having a larger field of vision.
Yeah.
I can see the entire pasture. I'm not going like this and only looking at what that mountain in front of me looks like.
Brandy, bring this closer to you. There you go.
I'm usually much louder. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. You're totally, and I just realized
I don't want to hit it with my
I know. That's why I was like, she's halfway through her burrito. Because I was like, it's farther away, but you're eating this, child-sized burrito.
Anyway, it is a small child.
You know what I thought, though, with regard to all of this, I was wondering kind of like, why is this a different thing to experience? Like, why is it weird to say like a 10-year time frame? And I think for me, at least, when I really sat down, it's like, okay, you got this 10-year podcast, like it's overwhelmingly successful 10 years, but you're at year 2.5. At least for me, I realized really quickly, it's like, okay, you're only going to be able to do this once. Mm-hmm. Like once you hit 50 or something, like unless or something, and if you're lucky enough to hit 50, you're not doing this again.
Right.
Like this is it. My grandmother, years back, before she passed away, she went to purchase a car, and she had this idea of what car she was going to get. And her friend was like, hey, Rita, this is your last car. So I know you want like an economical one and you want this and you want that. Like that's all well and fine, but you better get exactly what you want.
Good.
You're not getting another one.
Yeah.
And so she went to buy a car and left with a completely different one, which I thought was great. But for me, especially now, it's like, I'm not starting over.
No.
If I hit 50, there are only one or two options. I either hit 50 and I was right, and this is an overwhelmingly successful podcast, and that this is all I'm doing until I stop, or I'm 50 and it's like, okay, this failed somehow, but like then I'm just getting a job and calling it a day. Like I cannot.
You tried though. You can say you put in the effort, the time, the energy,
10 years,
everything.
Like, I cannot conceptualize doing this again. Like this is the second one that I've done, and like I did other stuff besides tutoring too, and it's like it's too hard. Like this is too painful.
It takes a level of grit. I think the reason 10 years feels so different is there is a buy-in and a dedication level of I'm investing at minimum 10 years. And I think that's that mentality of when you meet other people who have this, like, I'm putting it in and I'm putting it all on the line. And if it fails, then you know what I can say. I gave it everything. But if it doesn't, oh my gosh, I have just invested 10 years of my life, and look at the amazing product of this investment and this energy, and what a cool thing. And obviously at that point, you really hope that it's a domino effect and has helped people, because at the end of the day, you are a service person. I truly I believe that in my core, that you are here to provide value and service to others, because that's who you are from like a pinnacle. And I feel like in 10 years to look at all of the people that you served, the community you served, and that you've built from this. Because these people that are following you, hey guys, shout out, you guys are the best. The people following you have become their own community. They know that they are right next to one another. They live in the same community. They serve the same people. They go to the same places, but they may have never met. But somehow they're all part of this amazing group of people that follows you. And
it's like an ecosystem.
It is. Yeah. It is a beautiful thing. And so I think at the end of 10 years, to be able to look back and watch all of the ways you were able to serve your community through this amazing platform is going to be, I can't wait till we have a party for it.
Dude, it's going to be lit.
It is going to be the most lit party ever.
I feel like we're just starting to scratch it too. Like, because just think about the beef council with like the burger competition.
I'm so excited.
The burger battle. Like, this is going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Like I heard Mr. Beast on Rogan.
Okay.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of people did, but he had this like massive hit when he was 12. He did some YouTube video, and then he was like addicted. And then he didn't have another like really gigantic hit until he was like 19 or something. And then it took off completely.
Right.
But it took him all this time to really refine what he was doing. And then ultimately what he did, and what he was saying on Rogan, he's like, listen, I developed this ability to make these things go viral and like generate money from them and do these things. So he was like, I essentially applied that to philanthropic endeavors. So he started doing videos where it's like, I delivered, 1,000 turkeys to like 1,000 people in an hour. And this is what it looked like. Turkeys flying everywhere. And he's like, you can do philanthropic things and make them go viral and make money out of them. And he's like, and I developed the skill set to do that. And so that's what I'm targeting. Right. And there's a portion of what he does, which is still just blanket entertainment, but then he uses the entertainment also for philanthropic episodes. And I feel like I got really excited when the Beef Council was like, hey, will you help us with this? I'm like, hell yeah, I'll help you with this. Like, let's do the beef battle. And like, let's do, like the BSU career day. And like, let's do the Indian Creek Plaza, thing.
Right.
Like, let's do these things because that's really important to the community. And it's taken me years to develop this platform where it's something that I can, it's like I have this tool, like I have this hammer and I can hit these nails. It's like, let's hit all the nails. Like, let's bring Idaho to new people moving to Idaho and then also bring it to the rest of the world. Like, let's educate the world on it.
That is one of the best pieces actually about Idaho. That's one thing when we were initially moving here, we noticed that there were activities for families almost every day. Every weekend there was live music, there was events for families, there was all of these things to participate in. And it was such a big culture shift for us, where we came from not necessarily having all of those types of things to every weekend there's something that we can get out in our community and connect with people and feel like our community supports us as well in all of that. So the fact that you're able to find ways to nail those nails in and help, whether it's advocate for those things that are happening or support those things in some way. Oh my gosh, it reiterates that this is not something that should go anywhere in the next 10 years. You have,
I hope so.
Intention has a smell.
You need more coffee, buddy?
Of course I need more coffee. Is that a question? When you were talking though, I was thinking through, I've had this analogy lately, and I think you can probably agree with this. So diamonds,
Yes.
coal,
Yeah.
pressure to the point where you're almost going to break and you come out a diamond, right? Or you get a diamond out of it.
Yes.
And it's so much felt like that for a lot of my friends and even me. And I'm sure you can understand this and feel this way, that it just has felt like I've been this piece of coal and this pressure is just building around me and building around me. And I'm like, what am I coming out? I'm either going to be crushed under this pressure, or I'm going to come out the other end a bajillionaire. I don't know. Maybe not a bajillion. Like,
I'm made of diamond.
I am diamond. I think of Minecraft immediately. Oh gosh, I have children. But it's just this beautiful process that is ugly, and it's not always the fun, and it always feels overwhelming. And then when you see that, like the light at the other side, and you're seeing all of this beautiful nature coming out of that hard time, you have an appreciation for that hustle and that grit that it took. I mean, I'm sure you can look at this today. We had this conversation of editing.
Right.
And when you go, I've done it. I figured it out. Right. When you crest that hill and you are just on that, like, I can breathe, I can soar a little more. I'm not like trembling from all of the overwhelm.
Right.
It is such a neat feeling.
Yes.
It is so cool.
Yeah, and the pressure, like the crushing seasons. Like, here's something very interesting. Like, do you ever see that movie Geodome with Pauly Shore?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Remember
I
that?
love that movie.
Pauly Shore, right? Back
Yes.
the weasel. Remember, like that was this thing. Pauly Shore's an interesting guy. But the point is, like that geodome, right? The whole concept is they're going to like recreate this environment within the dome. And what's interesting is people did that. People tried to do that, and they had this like very rainforest mentality. So they or kind of thing, because they're like, all right, well, we need these plants, we need oxygen, we need all this stuff, right?
Right.
And so they planted these rainforest trees that were supposed to create like this gigantic canopy and all this stuff. And the trees grew, and then they all fell over. Right. So what? Yeah, this is what happened. They realized that as the trees grow in the rainforest, they're affected by winds and weather and nature. So essentially what happens is you have this tree coming up and it gets hammered this way, which hyper compresses all the cells, like say on the left side. Right. And then it gets blown back the other way. So it goes through this constant compression period where everything's getting harder and harder and harder and more rigid.
And it's having to strengthen itself.
And it has to reinforce itself like crazy if it's going to keep growing. And those are the ones that make it. They've been like molded like over hundreds of years. Just like they're just hard wood.
Yes.
And in the absence
One more time. That's
it.
the visual.
There it is. It's like a burrito. So they're these monster plants that in the absence of that, they just fall over.
Yeah.
Like we're built for the stresses. And if we don't have the stresses, we are useless. Like we do not get molded into what we could be. And I feel that like in my core, even looking back and feeling bad about what I was in college. It's like, okay, yeah, you were an idiot in college. You're not an idiot now. And aren't you happy you got hammered in college and became something different? What if you didn't learn that lesson in college? What if you were like 28 and you learned that lesson? Or what if you were like in your 30s and you had to learn that lesson? Like, that's terrible. You're going to learn hopefully you're going to learn there are only two options. You either learn the lesson or you don't. Okay, well, let's say I have to learn it at some point. Would you rather learn it earlier or later? Oh, no, give it to me earlier. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you learned it earlier. You condensed all of this learning into this like little tiny time frame of 4 years, and you came out a better person, and that sucked. But you learned the lessons. Like, at least you got that going for you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Brandy.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that about Amazon trees.
Yeah.
I did.
Like
I had
rainforest trees.
No idea that rainforest trees, because
I actually think it's oak trees too. Like, I think pretty much like oak trees are these knobby, insane, rigid, hard trees that like, and if you overwater them, like they are built for drought situations. That's why you have the California oak.
When you start, so we garden. We love to garden. Like, that's our thing at home. We have a huge garden in the back. And one of the things I learned when I was learning how to make like little seedlings and make your things grow from, you have to put them outside to get acclimated to the weather. Because when we start them inside, they have warmth, they have sunlight, they are being watered appropriately, and they have no wind to push against them to strengthen them. So it is so neat to hear that all of these things are created with stressors in mind. Stressors have to be a part of the success. So it's neat to see not only entrepreneurs, plants, that stress is always going to be a part of development. It's how you handle that stress.
Right.
And how you go forward with it.
It's really, really interesting. What a trip we're on. God bless. I love that you get to help entrepreneurs.
Oh my gosh.
I love that I am an
entrepreneur. It is my favorite thing. And literally, I get so much joy watching.
I want to come work for the chamber. I'd be so positive with people. I'd like help people with their content.
You align with our values.
I align with the value and the vision and the mission.
You're
like,
hired.
Come on. Like, I would crush it.
You are an honorary employee as it is. I feel like already.
Another volunteer position.
If we have a position open up, if a position opens, I will let you know first. You have first dibs, Matt. Don't worry.
You should let me come do a presentation to your members on social media comms.
Do you want to be a lunch and learn speaker?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We'll look at our calendars after we're done and we're getting you on the books.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love that. I love that. Because I actually, there are a lot of organizations that are starting to reach out. Like, can you come and do a workshop for our comms team?
Yeah.
Because people need thought leadership. Some people do, right? People need thought leadership stuff. And it's this interesting problem where they're like, okay, we don't know how to do it, but we see you have done it. So like, come tell us what you did, right? It's like, oh yeah, I mean, it takes a while and like, it's really hard, but like, these are the steps.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But
I'll be
having
a lunch and learn
I
thing.
would love that because those deliverables are super important. We've had some really great speakers this year going in. This next lunch and learn is a little different. It's actually a lunch and network where we play networking games and we connect our community. But we have lunch and learns where we want those thought leaders. We want the people that are in the forefront that have learned those hard lessons to teach and go, hey, this is how I guide you through these things. Because you're bound to face these issues as a business owner, a development person in this business. Everybody's going to face these hurdles. How do you jump over it without getting caught up in it? I'm in. I am so in. Oh my gosh.
I'm pumped.
Yes.
Brandy, listen, I know you got work to do today. Thank you for coming in.
Yes.
We are back on in 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. And thank you again for Heather. Heather Ferguson making this possible.
Her husband's not Kevin, is he?
I'm going to ask.
Ask. Because I knew a Kevin Ferguson in high school. Probably not the same Ferguson.
Probably not the same person.
Ferguson is not that rare of a name.
It's not. But if you know them, you know them. They're good people, cool people.
Kevin Ferguson was a good guy. Yeah, he was fine.
That's cool. You know what? Now I have questions. Oh, so many questions.
So many questions. Listen, we'll do it in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming. And thank you for Spitfire.
Yes, absolutely. Spitfire, hit it. This is amazing. We can't wait to have business after hours there in April.
I crushed that. God bless it. All right. Thanks, Brandy.
Bye.